The cuffs clicked shut like the slam of a coffin lid. The irony? The man in them had defended criminals for a living only now. The criminal was supposed to be him. The headlines would scream, "Prominent black attorney arrested on fraud charges," but none would mention the truth. That Marcus Reed's real crime was winning the wrong case against the wrong people. The room smelled of old coffee and stale sweat. Marcus sat alone at the interrogation table, his wrists chafing against cold steel. Across from him, Detective Harris leaned back in his chair, smug as if this was already over. "Must be tough," Harris drawled. "One day you're the guy in the nice suit telling juries what to think. Next day you're just another perp." Marcus held his gaze, his voice steady but edged with heat. "You planted this, and I'm going to prove it." The detective smirked. "Good luck proving anything when you're the one on trial." Marcus wasn't naive. He knew the system spent a decade navigating its shadows, defending clients who couldn't afford the luxury of innocence. But this was different. This was personal. The case that landed him here involved James L. Porter, the CEO of a billion-dollar real estate firm, accused of illegal land seizures targeting minority neighborhoods. Marcus had won that case barely by exposing forged deeds and payoffs to city inspectors. He hadn't expected that victory to put a target on his back. 2 weeks later, the police found evidence of bank fraud in Marcus's personal accounts he hadn't even opened. And the judge who signed the arrest warrant? The same judge Marcus had humiliated on the witness stand 3 months earlier. Through the courthouse glass, the rain streaked like tears over the city's face. The arraignment was a circus. Every reporter with a camera wanted the shot. The black man in chains, the lawyer turned criminal. But there, just behind the swarm, stood Sofia Alvarez, his intern. Her eyes were wide, her lips pressed tight, like she was holding something back. Marcus caught her gaze for only a second before the bailiff shoved him forward. Inside the courtroom, the prosecutor, William Crane, read the charges in a voice dripping with theatrical outrage. Multiple counts of wire fraud, money laundering, and obstruction of justice. He turned to the jury with a look that said, "You know his type." Marcus clenched his fists under the table. This was exactly what Crane wanted: a silent defendant who looked like every stereotype the jury had been taught to fear. That night, in the cramped cell that smelled faintly of bleach and despair, Marcus replayed every step of the last 3 months. Somewhere, there was a crack in their story, a flaw he could exploit. But to find it, he'd have to play a dangerous game using every connection, every favor, every scrap of legal trickery he knew. And first, he'd have to survive long enough to make it to trial. The first break came unexpectedly. Sofia visited him the next morning, her voice trembling as she whispered through the glass divider. "They came to my apartment last night," she said. "2 men. They asked about you. They wanted your case files." Marcus's eyes narrowed. "Did you give them anything?" She shook her head violently. "No, but Marcus, they knew things about my family. My brother's immigration status. Her voice cracked. They said if I don't cooperate, they'll make sure he gets deported." The walls were closing in not just on Marcus, but on anyone who stood beside him. The system wasn't just corrupt, it was vindictive. He couldn't fight this alone. But trusting someone now was like handing them the knife they could stab him with. Still, Sofia's fear was real. And if they were willing to go after her, it meant his case had rattled some very dangerous cages. Marcus leaned closer to the glass. "Sofia, I need you to do something for me. Something risky." Her eyes darted toward the guard, then back to him. "What?" "Find the original deed files for the Porter case. They're in the archive room on the 3rd floor of the courthouse. But don't let anyone see you. If those files disappear, they can rewrite the story however they want." Sofia's lips tightened. "If I get caught, they'll ruin your life anyway," Marcus interrupted. "At least this way, you have a chance to fight back." 2 days later, Marcus received a folded note in his meal tray. No signature. Just 6 words. "They know. Get out. Tonight." His stomach turned cold. There was no way to get out of county jail not without help from the inside. And if the warning was real, someone wanted him gone before he could testify. He didn't have the luxury of hesitation. That night, as the guards shuffled inmates for laundry duty, a figure slipped him a set of janitor's coveralls and a ring of keys. "Who are you?" Marcus whispered. The man's face stayed in shadow. "Friend of a friend." "Move." Marcus moved. Marcus slipped through the service corridor, heart pounding in his ears louder than the echo of his footsteps. The air back here was damp, heavy with the scent of disinfectant and mildew. Every door he passed felt like a possible betrayal. One wrong turn, and he'd be face to face with a guard who had no reason to believe a felon in janitor's clothes belonged anywhere but a cell. The man in the shadows, Marcus, still hadn't caught a glimpse of. His face moved fast, almost too fast for Marcus to keep up. They cut through a maze of maintenance tunnels beneath the courthouse. "Keep your head down," the stranger muttered without looking back. "Cameras aren't the problem. People are." They emerged into a dimly lit boiler room, where steam hissed through ancient pipes. The man stopped and finally turned toward him. Marcus's breath caught. He knew that face. Jackson Cole. Former client. Former gang enforcer. Marcus had gotten him acquitted 2 years ago on charges of aggravated assault because the police had tampered with witness statements. "You owe me," Jackson said flatly. "This makes us even." "Why?" Marcus asked, voice low but sharp. "Why help me now?" Jackson leaned in, eyes hard. "Because the people after you? They're the same people who put a bullet in my cousin's head last month. And I've got my own reasons for wanting them gone." They climbed a rusted service ladder to a storm drain opening. Jackson pried the grate loose with a crowbar, the sound of metal against concrete almost deafening in the silence. Rain hammered the alley above them. Marcus pulled himself through, the cold hitting his face like a slap. Freedom, if you could call it, that smelled like wet asphalt and cigarette smoke. Jackson handed him a black hoodie from a duffel bag. "Put it on, and stay away from streetlights." Marcus pulled the hood low. His legal mind was already racing. Escaping custody would brand him a fugitive, but staying in custody would guarantee his conviction. Either way, the system had already decided what he was. They didn't head toward safety. They went deeper into the city's underbelly, the warehouse district, where every window was boarded up and every shadow looked like it could pull a knife. Jackson led him into a half-collapsed building that smelled faintly of gasoline and rot. Inside, 2 men sat at a card table. Both were armed. "This him?" one asked. "Yeah," Jackson replied. "This is Reed." The taller man set down his cards. "Then we don't have much time." Marcus sat across from them, scanning for exits. "Who are you?" The man's gaze was ice. "We're people who've been burned by the same fire you're in now. We've been collecting proof, names, dates, payouts, the whole thing. Judges, prosecutors, cops, real estate moguls. And your case? It's the thread that can unravel all of it." Marcus's stomach tightened. "And what's the catch?" "You stay alive long enough to take it public," the man said. "That's it. You're the only one with the credibility to make this stick. They kill any of us, nobody blinks. But they kill you, it's national news." Marcus almost laughed at the twisted logic. "So I'm a bulletproof vest for the truth." They gave him a burner phone, a fake ID, and an address scribbled on a napkin. "Safe house. Don't call anyone you can't trust with your life," the taller man warned. But Marcus knew there was one person he had to call, no matter the risk: Sophia. He found an old payphone 2 blocks away, the receiver sticky and the cord frayed. When she answered, her voice was breathless. "Marcus? Oh my God. No names," he cut in. "Listen carefully. Do you still have the deed files?" "Yes." "But Marcus, the courthouse is crawling with feds. They've been asking everyone where you are." "Then you need to disappear," he said. "Go to the safe house at—" The line went dead. Marcus froze. Either the connection had dropped or someone was already listening. The safe house was a cramped apartment above a shuttered pawn shop. The furniture was mismatched, the windows sealed with duct tape, the refrigerator humming louder than it should. Marcus dropped onto the couch and pulled the burner phone from his pocket. No signal. He didn't sleep that night. Every creak in the floorboards sounded like footsteps coming for him. By dawn, his eyes burned from exhaustion, but his mind was razor sharp. If they had Sophia, time was running out. 3 days later, a news alert lit up the small TV in the corner. Breaking: fugitive attorney Marcus Reed wanted for additional charges: witness tampering, conspiracy. And there, in grainy footage, was Sophia handcuffed, being led out of a government building. Marcus felt something hot coil in his chest. They weren't just trying to destroy him. They were sending a message: everyone you care about is fair game. Jackson returned that evening, tossing a manila folder onto the coffee table. "Pulled this from a police drop box," he said. Marcus flipped it open. Inside were surveillance photos of him, of Sophia, of Jackson. Pages of financial records, most of them fabricated. And at the back, a list of priority targets. His name was at the top. Sophia's was second. And the name under hers? Detective Harris. Marcus stared. Why the hell would they be watching Harris? He's one of theirs. Jackson smirked. Not anymore. Word is, Harris tried to shake Porter down for more cash than agreed. You know how they deal with traitors. For the first time, Marcus saw a crack in their armor. If Harris was on their hit list, maybe just maybe he could be turned. It took 2 days of planning and every scrap of street-level intel Jackson could pull. Harris was on medical leave, holed up in a motel on the outskirts of the city. Marcus knew the risk showing his face was a gamble, but waiting was worse. He found Harris in a room that smelled like stale whiskey and fear. The detective's arm was in a sling, his badge tossed on the nightstand. "Read," Harris said, half laughing. "Guess I shouldn't be surprised." Marcus stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "They're coming for you, too. You know that, right?" Harris's smirk faltered. "What do you want?" "I want names. Records. Everything you've got on Porter and his friends." Harris shook his head. "You think I'm stupid? If they find out." "They already have." Marcus tossed the manila folder onto the bed, opened to Harris's name. Harris's eyes lingered on it for a long, silent moment. Then he exhaled, the sound almost a surrender. "There's a flash drive. Locker at Union Station. Codes 9347. Marcus didn't have time to process what Harris had just handed him. By the time he reached the station, his pulse was thudding like a war drum. The locker was on the far end, tucked under a flickering light. Inside, wrapped in a torn brown envelope, was a black flash drive. He slipped it into his pocket just as a voice behind him said, "Don't move." 2 men in dark suits stood there, guns low but ready. Marcus smiled faintly, even as adrenaline roared through him. Guess we're past the point of subpoenas. One of them reached for his arm. Marcus moved first. He slammed the locker door into the man's face, grabbing his wrist and twisting until the gun clattered to the ground. The second man lunged, but Marcus shoved him into a row of lockers, the metal rattling like a drum line. By the time a train's brakes screamed overhead, Marcus was gone, flash drive still in his pocket. Back at the safe house, he plugged the drive into an old laptop Jackson had scrounged from a thrift store. Files loaded slowly, but when they did, his stomach turned. It wasn't just evidence of fraud. It was everything: bank statements, recorded calls, internal memos, payments to judges, threats against witnesses, land deals worth millions, all tied to displacing minority communities. And at the center of it all, James L. Porter. Marcus leaned back, staring at the screen. This was enough to burn the whole system down. But getting it into the right hands without ending up dead before sunrise? That was the part they hadn't figured out yet. Jackson lit a cigarette, the ember flaring in the dim light. "So what's the play?" Marcus's eyes were steady. "We go public. Not to the cops, not to the courts. Straight to the press. Somewhere they can't bury it." Jackson smirked. "That'll put a target the size of Texas on your back." Marcus's jaw tightened. "It's already there." That night, Marcus composed a statement, short, sharp, impossible to misinterpret, and attached every file from the flash drive. All that was left was to choose where to send it. But before he could hit send, the lights went out, and the floor beneath him creaked. The hum of the refrigerator died with the blackout, plunging the safe house into a silence so thick it felt alive. Marcus's hands froze over the keyboard. Somewhere in the darkness, a floorboard groaned. Jackson's voice came low and sharp from across the room. "Don't move." Marcus didn't. His eyes tried to adjust, but the apartment was pitch black, the only light the faint silver glow of rain-lit clouds through a thin gap in the curtains. Another creak, this time closer. Jackson moved first, silent, quick. There was a scuffle, a muffled grunt, then the wet crack of something hard meeting bone. Marcus's instincts kicked in. He swept the laptop and flash drive into his bag and crouched low, moving toward the back room. A beam of light sliced through the darkness, a flashlight. A voice followed, cold and precise. "Put your hands where I can see them." Marcus ducked behind the kitchen counter, his mind racing. The voice was unfamiliar, probably not local cops. Too controlled, too confident. Another man's voice came from near the front door. "Bag him and let's go." Marcus's hand found a steak knife in the sink. Primitive, but better than nothing. The beam swept closer. Jackson lunged from the shadows, tackling the man with the flashlight. They crashed into the counter, sending utensils clattering to the floor. Marcus didn't wait, bolted for the back window, yanking it open. Cold rain slapped his face. The fire escape was slick under his shoes as he scrambled down. Behind him, the sound of boots pounding on metal told him he wasn't alone. Halfway down, Marcus slipped, catching himself on a rusted railing that bit into his palm. Pain shot up his arm, but he kept moving. At the bottom, the alley stretched out like a tunnel of shadows. He sprinted toward the street, lungs burning. A car engine roared to life nearby. Headlights flared, blinding him. Marcus veered left, cutting between two dumpsters just as gunfire split the night. Bullets sparked off brick. He dropped to the ground, crawling through the narrow gap until he burst into another alley. By the time he reached the next block, the city's noise swallowed the chase. Horns blared. Music thumped from a distant bar. He yanked off his hoodie, turning it inside out before pulling it back on. His phone, still the burner, buzzed in his pocket. Unknown number. He answered, breathless. "Reed," a woman's voice said quickly, "it's not safe. They're in the building." Marcus froze. "Sophia?" "They moved me to a federal holding facility, but I had one call. I used it." "You have to," her voice cut off in a hiss of static. Then nothing. Marcus shoved the phone away, mind already shifting. If Sophia was still alive, he couldn't just blow this wide open without securing her safety. The files were powerful, yes, but power in the wrong moment could get her killed, which meant he needed leverage. He ducked into an all-night diner, the neon sign buzzing like a dying wasp. The waitress didn't look twice at him as he slid into a corner booth. From here, he could see the street, watch for tails. He pulled out the flash drive again, turning it over in his hand. Somewhere in this data was the key to forcing their hand. Jackson showed up 20 minutes later, limping, a cut on his cheek. He slid into the booth across from Marcus without a word. "They were professionals," Marcus said. "Not cops." Jackson nodded. "Mercs. Private security outfits tied to Porter's shell companies. They're cleaner than law enforcement and nastier." Marcus leaned in. "Then we can use that. If they're private, they're not untouchable. They've got contracts, payroll, a paper trail." Jackson raised an eyebrow. "You thinking of flipping one?" "I'm thinking," Marcus said, "of buying one." The plan was dangerous, borderline insane, but in Marcus's mind, it was the only way to get to Sophia. If they could bribe one of Porter's hired guns, they might extract her before the hammer fell. Step 1. Find one desperate enough to betray his employer. Jackson had a name by morning: Eli Ward. Former Marine, current trigger man for Porter's outfit, and according to Jackson's contacts, deep in gambling debt. They found him at a backroom poker table in a smoky bar. His hands trembled as he counted chips, his eyes darting between the cards and the door. Marcus slid into the chair across from him, tossing a thick envelope onto the table. "We both know you're losing tonight, Eli. I'm here to give you a way out." Eli's gaze dropped to the envelope, then back to Marcus's face. "You're either brave or stupid, showing up here." "Maybe both," Marcus said. "But I'm also your best chance at not ending up in a landfill when you can't pay what you owe." Jackson leaned in. "We need someone pulled out of a federal facility. Someone Porter wants silenced." Eli's eyes narrowed. "And you think I can just walk in and take them?" "I think you've got clearance, transport, and a reason to take our money," Marcus replied. "And we've got enough on Porter to make sure you don't have to work for Heimer anyone ever again." Eli didn't answer right away. The bar's noise filled the silence, clinking glasses, muffled laughter. Finally, he exhaled through his nose. "Double what's in the envelope, and I'll do it." Marcus didn't flinch. "Half now, half when she's safe." Eli gave a single, sharp nod. "You'll hear from me in 48 hours. Those 48 hours felt like a lifetime. Marcus barely slept, pacing the safe house until his legs ached. Every car engine outside sounded like trouble, every knock on the building's pipes like a signal. Then, at 2 a.m. on the second night, his phone buzzed. One text, "Package delivered." He didn't waste time. Jackson drove the stolen sedan through side streets until they reached an abandoned warehouse by the docks. Inside, sitting on a crate and wrapped in a thin blanket, was Sophia. Her eyes widened at the sight of him. "Marcus." He pulled her into a quick, fierce hug. "We don't have much time." With Sophia safe for now, the focus shifted to the files. They couldn't send them from the safe house. Too risky. They needed a public drop, somewhere that couldn't be shut down before the information spread. Sophia suggested something bold: live delivery. A press conference. Not through lawyers or reporters one-on-one, but in front of cameras, streaming everywhere. Once it's out there, she said, they can't make it disappear without looking even more guilty. Marcus stared at her, a slow smile forming. Then we make it the biggest damn circus this city's ever seen. They set the date for 3 days later. Enough time to bait the media, not enough time for Porter's people to adapt. The location, the steps of the courthouse where Marcus had been arraigned, with every local and national outlet invited under the pretense of exclusive legal revelations. Marcus knew it wouldn't be a peaceful event. They'd come for him. But that was the point. If the cameras were rolling, the world would see exactly how far the system would go to protect itself. The night before, he sat alone, staring at the flash drive one last time. Every choice had a cost. And tomorrow, the bill would come due. The courthouse plaza looked different in daylightless, like a temple of justice, more like a stage. News vans lined the street in a jagged row, their satellite dishes pointed skyward like metal flowers. Reporters milled about in raincoats, microphones in hand, eyes bright with the scent of scandal. Marcus stood just beyond the crowd, the hood of his black coat pulled low, the flash drive in his fist so tight it pressed into his skin. Beside him, Sophia adjusted the strap of her satchel, her jaw set. "You sure about this?" she asked. "Not even a little," Marcus said. "But that's not the point." They moved toward the courthouse steps. The buzz of conversation swelled into a roar as cameras swung in their direction. Shouts cut through the rain. "Marcus, did you escape police custody? Is it true you fabricated evidence? Are you here to surrender?" Marcus ignored them all, climbing the slick stone stairs 2 at a time until he reached the top. From here, he could see the whole plaza's sea of faces, lenses, and umbrellas. He stepped up to the podium Sophia had arranged, tapping the microphone. The screech of feedback cut through the noise, pulling every eye to him. "My name is Marcus Reed," he began, his voice steady. "And 3 months ago, I won a case that should have been the beginning of justice for a lot of people in this city. Instead, it became the beginning of a war." He told them about James L. Porter, about the land grabs, the forged deeds, the payoffs to judges, about the way the police had planted evidence against him, and the mercenaries who'd come in the night to make sure his voice never reached this moment. And then, without flourish, he lifted the flash drive high. "Everything I'm telling you is here: bank records, recorded calls, emails. I'm not giving it to one reporter. I'm giving it to all of you. Right now." Sophia stepped forward, holding a small hub of laptops wired to portable Wi-Fi. She plugged the drive in and hit send. Within seconds, the files began uploading to dozens of news outlets and cloud drives across the world. That's when the shouting started, not from the crowd, but from the street below. Black SUVs screeched to a stop at the barricades, doors flying open. Men in dark suits poured out, their earpieces flashing. The crowd's excitement morphed into chaos. Some reporters ducked behind tripods. Others shoved forward to capture the confrontation. Marcus didn't move. If they wanted to drag him away, they'd have to do it in full view of every camera here. One of the men broke from the pack, striding up the steps. His face was unreadable, his voice smooth. "Mr. Reed, I'm going to have to ask you to come with us." Marcus met his gaze. "You're not law enforcement. That's not your concern." "It is," Marcus said, leaning toward the microphone. "Because the men standing behind him work for the same corporation whose crimes I just made public. And they're about to prove to all of you exactly how the system works when it's not on your side." The man's jaw tightened. He reached for Marcus's arm. A uniformed officer stepped between them. Not one of Porter's men, this was city police. The officer's voice carried over the rain. "He's under the protection of the court until these allegations are reviewed." Marcus didn't know the cop's name, but in that moment, the man might as well have been a wall of steel. The corporate enforcer hesitated, his earpiece crackling. And then the decision came from somewhere above his pay grade. The SUVs pulled back. The suits retreated. The plaza erupted. Questions flew like shrapnel. Sophia's laptop chimed a final confirmation that the files had gone live everywhere they'd sent them. It was done. But Marcus knew the fight wasn't over. The fallout was immediate. Within days, judges were suspended, police chiefs retired, and James L. Porter was indicted on federal charges. His empire, built over decades of quiet corruption, began to crumble in the harsh light of public scrutiny. Marcus still faced his own charges. The fraud case against him didn't vanish overnight. Though the tide had shifted, too many eyes were on the prosecutors now. Sophia testified before an independent review board, her voice steady as she described the threats, the bribes, the night the men came to her door. Jackson disappeared back into the city's underworld, but not before sending Marcus a single text. "We ain't square yet, but we're closer." Weeks later, Marcus stood on the courthouse steps again, this time without cameras, without a crowd. The rain had stopped, but the air still smelled of wet stone and new beginnings. Sophia joined him, handing him a folder. "The DA's office is dropping the charges. Insufficient evidence." Marcus opened it, scanning the words, feeling the weight lift off his chest. "Not all of it, but enough." "You going back to practicing law?" she asked. He looked at her, a slow smile forming. "Not the way I used to. I'm done playing defense in a rigged game." "What then?" Marcus turned toward the city skyline, the morning sun breaking through clouds. "We build something better. And we start with the people who've been told they don't have a voice." It wouldn't be easy. The system didn't crumble in a day, and the men who tried to silence him weren't gone for good. But Marcus had learned something in the shadows, in the alleys, in the stolen moments of freedom. They can only kill the truth if it stays quiet. And his voice had never been louder. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.